We're talking today with Mr. Darrell Thornley of Spring Lake, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Thornley, can you start by telling us a little bit about your own background? To start with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Cadre, Oklahoma, February 21st, 1925.
All right. And what did your family do?
My dad had a ice plant, a trucking line, and a storage and transfer and storage unit.
Okay. Now, did you stay there while you were growing up, or did you move on?
I stayed there till I was 17 or 16, and then I went to my sister's to work, and there I was drafted.
All right. But your father was able to hold on to his businesses during the Depression and all of that?
Oh, my dad did, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what part of Oklahoma was Caddo in?
It's in the southeastern part. Actually, I was raised in Duvant, but at that time, all the children of my grandparents was born at her home.
Mm-hmm.
There they had midwives, and we didn't go to hospitals in them days.
Right.
And immediately after I was born, we went back to my folks who lived in Duvant.
Right. And was that in the same area, or?
That's the same area. It's only 12 miles distance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
We're 21 miles from the Texas border, so we're pretty far southeast.
Right. So that would be more in hill country and not so much the Dust Bowl area?
And in Oklahoma Hills, where I was born.
Yeah. So that wasn't really where the Dust Bowl stuff took place so much?
Yes, it was.
Well, you got that too, okay.
A lot of them went to California, the Dust Bowl.
Okay, so that did affect your area.
Yes, we took California without firing a shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's Okies.
Right. All right. So, you see, now do you remember hearing about Pearl Harbor?
Yes.
Remember how you heard about that?
Well, when Pearl Harbor happened, I was with my sister and her husband at the skating rink in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm.
And they announced it, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to be gone."
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I was.
All right. Now, you got a draft notice, and could tell us the story there about how you got inducted then.
Well, I got a notice to report to the induction center and to take physical. And I went to take the physical, and while I was taking this physical, I got in the wrong line, and next thing I know, I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
All right.
I was in the Army.
Were you able to contact your sister and let her know what happened to you?
Yes, I told them to send me some clothes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, is Fort Sill where you did your basic training then?
No.
Okay.
I left from Fort Sill. It was an induction center, so after leaving Fort Sill, we had a train to California, and I took basic training at Camp Roberts, California.
All right. Now, what is Camp Roberts near? What city?
That's right off of San Luis Obispo,
Okay.
San Jose.
Yeah, so kind of south of San Francisco a little bit,
Right.
but yeah, general
In
area.
fact, the Hearst Castle sits on the reservation there.
All right. Now, what did you think of California when you got there?
Well, not too much. During basic training, with some of the training that was taken for creeping and crawling, I went through a creek and I had caught pneumonia in the heat where it was 110.
All right. Now, how long were you sick with the pneumonia?
Oh, I was only in the hospital about 5 days. That's when penicillin became available, and they loaded us down with penicillin, and we were back to duty in no time.
Okay, so you got to stay with the group of men that you were training with then?
With the same infantry replacement
Group, right.
bunch.
Now, can you describe the basic training process? What did you do there aside from crawl in a stream and get pneumonia?
Well, naturally we took training with with the rifle and took bivouac for 2 weeks at the end of our cycle and take 25-mile hikes and a lot of physical training.
Now, were you in good shape when you went out there?
I was in good shape. I stayed in good shape until my occurrence was World War II in Korea.
All right. How did the drill instructors treat you?
Say again?
How did the drill instructors treat you at Camp Roberts?
They were very strict. In fact, I was to stay there for Cadre, and I didn't want to, so I went ahead and took a transfer to an outfit that was training to go to the Pacific, which was the 97th Division.
Okay. Now, when you say they wanted you, Cadre, I mean, they wanted you to stay and help train more soldiers first?
Right, at Camp Roberts.
Okay. So you must have done pretty well then.
Oh, yes. I was what they call an acting squad leader.
All right. Now, had you done hunting or shooting back in Oklahoma when you were a kid, or?
No, very, very little. I did all that after the wars.
All right. Okay. So you move on and you join the 97th Division?
97.
All right.
Company A 386.
All right. And then where were they training?
They were training at San Luis Obispo. From San Luis Obispo, we went up to take amphibious training at Camp Callan.
Okay, and where was that? Also in California?
Just outside of San Diego.
Oh, San Diego? Yeah. All right. Amphibious training. All right. What did you do for that?
We rode LSTs and LCIs out to the Granada strands and make assault landings on at Camp Pendleton.
All right. Now, had you ever been out on the ocean before?
No, and I don't want to go out there again. They take you overseas when you're on a boat.
All right.
But this unit from that I was taking amphibious training with was scheduled to go to the Pacific, but at that time, the Battle of the Bulge, the Germans counterattacked it, and they changed our orders and shipped us to Europe.
All right. Now, so they had to put you on trains to get you back across the country, and then on boats?
We troop trained all the way from California to New Jersey.
Now, how long did that take?
It's hard to remember, but I know it was at least 5 or 6 days.
All right. Now, on that trip, could you at least get off the train occasionally, look out the window, that kind of thing?
Yes, you could. At every stop, you could get off and stretch your legs. Because we were what they call 40 and 8s, a lot of troops.
40. So you were in boxcars?
No, they
They
were.
were passenger cars?
No, they were. It wasn't passenger trains.
Okay.
No, we just had all the seating that was removed from these cars. And they put in cots, stacked 3 high
Okay.
on each side.
So I guess that gives you a place to sleep, maybe, but not real comfortable the rest of the time.
Not really, but comfort in them days was not looked for.
Right. All right. Now, you make it out to the East Coast, and then where do they load you on a ship?
They load us at off of Camp Kilmer. I
Camp
believe.
Kilmer, New Jersey? Yeah.
Camp Kilmer, and we boarded troop ships. Went over as a unit.
Now, do you remember when you went over? Was it early 45 then? Like January or February?
Well, let's see. We landed in Italy.
In England or
Italy.
France?
No, we landed at Le Havre, France.
Right.
And trucked up to the front lines.
Right. Now, by the time you got there, the Allies would have been pushing the Germans back and counterattacking now.
Yes.
All right. And your unit went kind of just right up into the fight?
Right into the fight. We were committed this side of the Rhine River,
Mm-hmm.
a city named Cologne.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it well. That was the first time I got paid in 3 months.
All right. Now, do you remember what the country looked like as you kind of got into Germany in that area?
You couldn't see too much of the country from over a rifle sight.
Mm-hmm.
I was a scout.
Okay.
We led companies.
Do you remember the first time you went out toward the enemy? I mean, the first action you're put into?
Yes, my squad leader got hit the first day on line.
Mm-hmm.
Sergeant Reinhardt. He's passed away now.
Mm-hmm.
Most of all my buddies are passed away.
Right. Okay. Can you describe a little bit that situation when you were going in on that first day? What was that like, or what was happening?
Well, your adrenaline is so high that you're not afraid because the adrenaline is really hitting you, and all the training that you've had gets you ready to take orders and move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really not much you can say about going into action.
Mm-hmm.
It's just automatic.
Okay. But do you remember anything of what was just sort of happening around you, or what kind of physical place you were in?
I remember the foxholes that it was cold at that time of year. This was in February, I
Right.
believe it was.
Yeah, that should be about right. And was there still snow on the ground at that point? Where you were?
No, the snow had already gone. But it was just cold and rainy.
Right.
I remember the forest in Germany,
Right.
the hills, the rivers. We crossed them in assault boats, rubber boats.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you have some small rivers to cross before you got to the Rhine, or did you do more of that river crossing later?
The engineers had built Bailey bridges across most of the small ones, and the real small ones, they just had slides that you could, well, it's like a ramps that you just cross over it in.
Now, was your company kind of taking casualties all along as you're moving toward the Rhine?
Oh, yes.
Right. Now, one of the things that happened a lot with new units, or green ones, was that the men who hadn't been in combat before didn't maybe know how to protect themselves as well as they did later. Like they were standing up too high, or talking at the wrong time, or things like that.
I never had the experience of that except when I went to Korea. As a unit, we all did the same training, and we stayed together as much as possible. The recruits that did come in fit very nicely.
So your unit in World War II then, that was well enough trained or well enough prepared that you could function pretty well once you got there? You didn't have to learn how to fight after you got there?
No.
Okay.
Well, you never really know how to fight until you hear the bullets coming, and then you learn real fast. So it's a fast learning experience.
All right. Now, do you have a sense of how long it was before you, when you were in the campaign and before you actually got to the Rhine? Was it a couple of weeks or longer than that?
It was probably about 3 weeks. We had to outfit, catch up, our supplies catching up to us, because the troop trains only, or the troop
Supply
ships
trains,
only had the troops on them, and the cargo ships came later. So it took 3 weeks for them to catch up to it.
Okay. So you were slowed down as much by supplies as you were by the Germans? You were waiting?
No,
Okay.
no. We had pretty good, as you're pretty well self-preserved with the unit, because the unit has everything that you need.
Okay. Now, in this period, I mean, what sense did you have of what kind of condition the German forces were in? Were they putting up a good fight? Were they retreating? What were they doing?
Well, they were retreating once we pushed out across the Rhine. And there was a lot of young kids that they must have been scraping the bottom of the barrel. The Germans were, in order to get old men and kids, because you didn't see too many. I think they used them more as well, I won't. I don't think it, but I probably not.
Well, they were running low on young men of regular military age, and a lot of those were concentrated in the elite units like the SS or things like that. And
yeah, but they used them like as fodder, so that the fighting units or the skilled people were back,
right,
retreating, setting up a line. They had retreated in leaps and bounds, you call it. Whereas you could go maybe 2 days without having to worry about too much battle, and then all of a sudden you hit a line of resistance.
Now, did you encounter many sort of permanent fortifications, concrete bunkers and things like that? Or were they just dug into foxholes and
they
trenches?
had no time for that. That was all down in Normandy and around the French country, because they were scraping the barrel.
Okay. Well, they had fortifications along their frontier. It was called the Siegfried Line, but it might be that by the time your unit got up there, the Americans were across that.
Yes.
Yeah, and so if you're past that, then there really wouldn't be a whole lot of anything else.
No, they was in the same situation when we set up for the night, we dug our foxholes, and I imagine they were doing the same thing.
Right. Okay. Now, when you got to the Rhine River, how did you get across?
We went across in assault boats, rubber boats, paddled across.
Okay. Now, when you did that, had the Americans already taken the other side, so it was safe to go across, or were you under fire?
We had to break through ourselves.
All right. Can you describe that, sort of just going across the river?
Mostly of it was we're concerned with, well, not the small arms fire. We was concerned with the artillery, because they had the river totally covered with artillery.
Well, could small arms fire sort of pop the boats or take all the air out of them? Did you talk about having?
Oh yes, we lost several boats going across.
And did you also lose them to the artillery, or was the artillery just noisy and scary?
There wasn't nothing you could do about that. Just hope you didn't get hit.
All right. Now, about how long do you think it took you to get across the river in those boats?
Oh, no more than 10 minutes.
Okay. Did the boats have motors, or did you have to paddle?
No, we paddled with the butts of our rifles.
The butts of your rifles, okay. How many men would be in a boat?
Usually 9.
Okay. Okay, then once you get to the other side, what was there?
You spread out and advance as far as you could until you could get more support from the other people crossing.
Right. And were there people coming across who had radios or things that could call back and get artillery support?
Yes, we had radio contact. Not the caliber of today, but they were good for 3 miles.
Right. Now, as you were doing these advances into Germany, were you able to call in artillery fire and air support?
Oh yes, we had an artillery spotter with every company.
And you move into Germany. Now, did you go into the city of Cologne? Was that part of what you did?
Yes, we occupied it.
All right.
Before we could cross.
Okay.
Cologne is on both sides of the river,
And so you were on the left
we were
side.
on the friendly side.
Right. Now, what condition was that city in when you got there?
Pretty well demolished. They had taken a lot of bombing and shelling.
Okay. Now, did you see anything of the civilian population at that point?
There's quite a few civilians there. They were hungry, and most of them would be around trying to get food.
Now, did you have much contact with them, or were you supposed to stay away
No,
from them?
we stayed away as much as possible.
Now, were they trying to live in blown-out buildings and things like that, or?
Right. And there were some buildings that wasn't too badly damaged.
Okay. Now then, you get in there. Now you get when you cross the river. Were you doing it away from the town,
To advancing into Germany.
but you weren't crossing in the middle of the city. You were kind of crossing
No,
farther downstream or upstream. Yeah.
No.
Okay. And then as you got into Germany, now, what kind of understanding did you have of what was going on? Did you figure the war was now almost over and you were winning, or were you just still worried about who was going to shoot at you tomorrow?
No, that wasn't until April and May, when they were retreating or giving up by the thousands. We had one division, complete division, surrender to us.
Now, as you're making the advance, were you still serving as a scout for your unit, or were you?
Yes.
Okay. And as a scout, what did you actually have to do on these advances?
Well, you have a first scout and a second scout, and then you have your platoon following them in squads, and you're usually about 150 yards in advance until you spot the enemy or until they start shooting at you, and you would alert the company by hand signal that you had encountered the enemy.
Right. So you didn't have your own radio or anything like
No,
that?
no. That was radios was only a level at platoon.
So the platoon leader would be in contact with company and company with battalion and so forth. All right. Now, how dangerous was it to be working as a scout?
Well, at first they let the scouts through to hit the main body, but at the very last couple of months of it, they shot at us first in order to make them farm up into skirmishes to attack.
Right. Now, we'll let those ring
Sorry
first.
about that. That's my telephone. They'll hang up if it's telemarketing.
All right. Okay. Now, so you had some situations where you would be advancing, you'd be the scout, you'd move somewhere into the middle of what would be the German position, and then the Germans behind you would then start shooting at your platoon? So you would be...
No, they were in front of us too, but
Okay.
they just didn't open fire on us.
Okay. So they let you get close, but they targeted the guys behind you? Now, when
But
that happened...
usually you're in as you approach, usually you're in a column, and once we locate the enemy, they break into squads, and the squads into platoons, and platoons into companies, so that you advance as a unit. We just laid low up there until the body come up.
Right. Okay. Now, what kind of losses did your company take over the course of those several months going in Germany?
Oh Lord, I don't know. You lose a lot of friends. You don't really like to think about them.
But you were getting a fair amount of turnover within your company, and
No, but then there wasn't thick action like there was at Normandy or the Battle of the Bulge. Our units would usually just get isolated units, other units. We advanced up to the Ruhr Valley, and at the Ruhr Valley they changed us and sent us to Czechoslovakia. And I got just into Czechoslovakia and was in a truck that overturned and was evacuated back to the hospital.
all right. Now, how was it that your truck overturned?
I assumed that the driver went to sleep because we were driving with the lights on. We thought the war was really over. This was May the 2nd, and the war was over May the 7th.
Right. So it was not that he was worried about being shot at or anything like that. It just
No,
was basically a
no,
traffic accident. Yeah.
They had been surrendering so fast and furious that we just even sent them back. We didn't even escort them back.
Okay. Now, as you were driving across Germany then, on the way down, did you see any of the prison camps or anything else like that along the way?
My unit wasn't in contact with that. I believe that was one of the other divisions that hit most of those.
Yeah, well, there were quite a few of them, so a number of different units
Yeah.
encountered those at one point or another along the way.
They wasn't in our area because, like I say, after we crossed the Rhine and went into Germany and headed toward the Ruhr Valley, which is industrial.
Right.
So there was very little. I mean, they didn't. Well, they probably did have a lot of prisoners.
Well, there would have been forced laborers and things like that there, but what you wouldn't have had would have been the big concentration camps, and the prisoners of war were usually kept farther east.
Yeah. We just didn't encounter any in my organization.
All right. Now, what happened to you after that accident?
Well, I was in this ambulance to go back to evacuation, and it turned over.
Oh.
It off of the bridge where they had just little ramps on each side. He lost control, and when I come to, I was in England.
Okay. All right. Now, what kind of injuries did you have?
I had a broken arm, a fractured skull. The fractured skull was from the ambulance, but my broken arm was with when our truck overturned.
Now, how long were you laid up then in that hospital?
7 months and 12 days.
Wow. What did you do all that time?
Well, we would got on a hospital ship out of England when we was able to travel in, and landed at Newport News, Virginia, and I was on a train to Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and which was a rehab center.
Right.
And I got my first 30-day leave, and my orders came through to go to Fort Sam Houston, Texas, to rehabilitation there. My wrist, where it was broke, had fused together, and I had a stiff arm. That was primarily why I was evacuated, because I wouldn't be any good for a while.
Right.
And so I was at Fort Sam Houston for, all I know is it was 7 months, 12 days, because I didn't have to pay insurance.
All right. Now, with that kind of injury, then you could move around and do things. You weren't stuck in a bed the whole time.
Oh, no.
And in fact, did they assign you any duty, or did you just kind of hang around?
No, you just were there for rehab, that's it.
All right. So how did you spend your time?
Well, some nights went in the San Antonio. But I don't know, 30 days of that was on rehab leave at home.
Right. Yeah. What was it like being home after having been off in the Army and across the ocean and back?
Felt very good.
Now, you do re-enlist, don't you? You stayed in the Army.
Well, from Fort Sam Houston, I was sent to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas for discharge. I had enough points to be discharged.
Right.
At that time, you got out of the military with the point system. And at Camp Chaffee, I got my first discharge, and I went home and I went to where I was working at before I went into the Army, and my spot had been filled by a family man, so they told me that I'd guaranteed 2 weeks job, but at that time they would release me, so I just told them where to go and left and re-enlisted.
All right. Now, did they give a bonus for enlisting, or did you not get that because you were on the order?
Well, you got, I think it was only, seems to recall it $300. I believe it was $300. But then after there was no re-enlistment bonus.
All right. So now, where then did you get stationed once you re-enlisted?
I went to Killeen, Texas, to the 20th Armored Division was forming up, and I was go there as Cadre. I didn't like it very well, so I asked for reassignment, and they did reassign me. I went to Italy, to 88th Division.
All right. Now, what were you doing in Italy then?
Well, I had had enough of the infantry, but I couldn't totally get away from it, so I joined or changed MOSs to Ammunition and Pioneer, which was 505 at that time, and I taught demolitions and used demolitions to help construct areas, buildings and stuff.
So were you knocking down damaged buildings or putting up new buildings? Or
No, we were just blowing holes. Italy's pretty rocky, and you couldn't dig in it, so we'd have to blast stones to even get some
so building material? Yeah.
no, I can't think of the phrase now. Latrines, and
Okay.
not only latrines, but also flagpoles for the in front of the buildings. If we wasn't on maneuvers,
Okay. Now, what part of Italy do they have you in?
I was at Grizia, which is outside of Udine.
Okay, so northeastern Italy then.
Yeah, and we used to. The 88th Division dissolved, and I went down to Trieste, which was an international. They made it an international port, and we had a regiment there, 350th or 351st, I believe it was. And there we just did maneuvers and training. We kept training.
Now, at this point, were you worrying at all about the Russians trying to come west, or trouble with Yugoslavia, or
No, it was Yugoslavia at that time advanced down to our lines and told us they were going to come through there and occupy Trieste, and we told them we would have to fight them, and I guess it was a stalemate because they eventually turned around and left. But that was pretty scary because they had artillery and stuff, and we had nothing but machine guns and rifles.
Right. Now, did you see Yugoslavs yourself, or did you just hear about it?
Oh yes, they were right across from us. You never talked to them, but
Oh, they were there.
we were dug in. It's comical.
Now, what kind of condition was the city of Trieste in at that point?
Beautiful, beautiful.
So that really hadn't been damaged particularly in the war?
It wasn't touched during the war.
Now, did you get a chance to go into the city when you were off duty?
Oh yes, oh yes. It's quite a little place. I enjoyed it.
Now, in general, what did the local people seem to think of the Americans?
Well, the Italians were nice to us what, when we mingled with them.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as I could see, they loved the Americans. I can't understand why.
Maybe you were better than Mussolini, or better than the Germans.
Yeah.
That's pretty likely. Okay. Now, how long were you based there?
I was there 3 years. Well, 3 years in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
But in Trieste, I was only there about 2.5 years.
Okay. And then where did you go then from Trieste?
I came back, I re-enlisted and came back to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and was assigned to a unit there, but there was no chance for advancement, and I asked for a transfer.
Mm-hmm.
Took about 6 months to get it, but I got a transfer. That was in 48, I believe. Yeah. From there I went down to Fort Bliss, Texas, assigned to a National Guard unit. I didn't like that, so I asked for a transfer. This was in 1950.
Mm-hmm.
And I was assigned to an ordnance. By then I had enough of the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was assigned to an ordnance outfit in Japan for occupational duty.
Mm-hmm.
And we got on a ship, passenger ship, and landed at Yokohama. In Yokohama, we went to camp. I believe it's Camp Drake,
Mm-hmm.
for us to be sent to our various units. And this was in June of 1950,
Right.
and it seemed like that they got I guess something from Washington, because next thing I know, I'm on a troop train and back in the infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down to Beppu, where the 24th Division headquarters was. Didn't even get off of the train. Well, I take it back. We got off of the trains and lined up in front of them, and one of the officers from the 24th Division come in and said, "You're A company, you're B company,
Mm-hmm.
you're C company, 1st Battalion." And I happened to be an A company, and I was a platoon sergeant at that time, so I guess they saw on my record that I had the combat infantryman's badge,
Right.
and they decided that's where I should be.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined Company A, 19th Infantry, and went into with the 24th. We got back on the same train, and next thing I know, I'm in Busan.
Okay. Now, when did you get to Busan, do you think? In July or later than that?
No, we got there in June.
Mm-hmm. And from Busan, where did you go?
We boarded Japanese ferries and
Mm-hmm.
and went across and landed at Busan.
Yeah.
And from Busan, we loaded into Korean trucks because there was no equipment over there. It was just, we were the first troops there.
Right.
We landed in Busan, and they issued us ammunition, and we moved forward. We then was informed that North Korea had overrun Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and was on their way down to us, and we were to go up and slow them down.
Mm-hmm.
But what was amazing about that was that everybody in my platoon, none of them were infantrymen. They were medics, cooks,
Mm-hmm.
truck drivers, jeep drivers, clerks, and they had no sense, they had no battle experience.
Right. What about the officers?
Well, the officers, they were trained.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we got the first graduation class of 1950 in Korea.
So they were trained, but they weren't experienced, maybe.
Well, they had never been combat trained.
Right.
Well, some of them probably had, because not all of them went to West Point until after they'd been in the service. But the majority of them was just straight out of the academy.
Right. Because I guess the way it worked was, after World War II was over, a lot of the divisions were kept sort of under strength. They didn't have a full combat complement.
We only had 3 regiments, but each regiment was only 2 battalions.
And they had to add a lot of extra people to get them up to strength.
Oh, yeah. And that was the replacements.
Right. So your unit then becomes part of the defense of the Pusan perimeter then? So you're defending that southern...
No, we advanced further than Pusan.
Well, the perimeter was out in front of Pusan. It wasn't right in the city. Yeah.
We formed the perimeter.
Right.
We advanced up to Tejon River, and that's where our commanding general was captured.
Right.
And the Tejon River, and then that was our first contact with the enemy, and we fell back to the Pusan perimeter.
Right.
What we formed at that time on the Nam River.
Okay. Now, at this point, it would have been the North Koreans who were coming in after you. What sort of impression did you have of them?
I guess they were glutton for punishment, because they would just, their tactics were not like ours, broken into squads and stuff. They'd come in and company strength and screaming and blowing the bugles. And I don't know how skilled they was, but they advanced right into fire. So they were brave, or either.
Okay. Now, were there times when they kind of broke into your positions or pushed you back, or were you able to hold on where you were?
No, we was able to hold on. Our position was pretty defensive at the time, but we lived on trucks. We'd go from one spot to another one in trucks to get off, unload, and meet a group, because they were coming in a straight line at us. They was different. Their units would advance miles apart, and we would stop and push them back, break up the attack, and get on our trucks and ride some more.
So your unit was working kind of like a fire brigade? I mean,
That's all we was a fire brigade.
One place and then another. All right. Now, how did those guys in your platoon, how well did they do? If these were guys who didn't really know much about fighting, what happened with them?
Well, the majority of them got knocked off. I believe the company strength was 167. And at the end of, by July the 14th, we only had 9 men. So casualties was pretty thick.
Now, is that not including the officers, or is that including the officers?
That including all of them. Mostly it was the officers, because the officers was too conscientious. You'd set up at night and your perimeter, and you'd give orders that nobody is to move out of your foxholes, and if there was anything moving, you shot it.
Right.
That lost a lot of lieutenants because of they being too conscientious of wanting to check their troops. So they I guess they suffered the most casualties it was.
Right. Now, did you come under a lot of artillery fire, or was it mostly just small arms?
No, it was mostly small arms and mortars. There was quite a few tanks coming through, though. Those Tiger tanks, and we or it wasn't Tiger tanks.
Well, they would have had Soviet T-34s.
T-34s, that's what they were.
Right. And what could you do about a T-34?
Well, we had rocket launchers, which was a 2.36,
Yeah, World War II.
and they
bazooka.
just bounced off of the vehicle.
Yeah.
So they rushed in some 3.5s,
Mm-hmm.
and we got them special delivery, and that's when we started first knocking out tanks.
Mm-hmm. Could you call in aircraft against them or artillery?
Oh yes, yes, yes. We had spotters with us, just like we did artillery spotters. We had Air Force liaison officers with us.
Okay. Now, what was the weather like at that point? Was it hot or wet?
It was
or...
hot. It was hot, and we wasn't prepared for this
Mm-hmm.
when it come in there. Like I say, the boys from Japan all of them was just there because their dad told them what a good place it would be.
Right. Yeah, these were not guys who were really trained as combat troops. They were sort of all support people and stuff who thought they'd just be in Japan.
Well, you learn fast.
Mm-hmm.
It don't take too long to learn how to fight.
Mm-hmm. Now then, did you get replacements added to your unit at some point? You get
Oh
more
yes,
guys?
we got replacements, but we fought as a unit. Sometimes we'd have 5 companies that actually consisted of just one company, one company, because of the number of casualties that we had.
Right. Okay. Now, about how long were you in the perimeter area then? Were you there for several months, or I guess
Well,
Incheon
we
is
stayed
September?
there until General MacArthur brought the landing at Incheon. And then at that time, when they cut off the supplies up there, we made our breakout of the Pusan perimeter and advanced towards the 10th Corps.
Right. Okay. Now, as you were moving, so you're kind of marching kind of the length of Korea. You're kind of marching up north, pursuing the North Koreans at that point. Was there still a lot of fighting going on, or were they mostly getting out of your way?
They were mostly trying to get away
Mm-hmm.
because once their supplies were cut off, they were helpless.
Mm-hmm. Now, how far did your unit keep going?
Well, we advanced up to, we took Seoul,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the decision was that we was to go ahead and take North Korea.
Right.
So we advanced on into North Korea, and we reached the Yalta River.
In the Yalu River, the north boundary.
That's the boundary of China. And,
Yeah, the Yalu. Yeah.
Yeah, Yalta.
Well, Yalta is a town in the Soviet Union on the Black Sea where there was a conference in '45. But the Yalu River was
The Yalu River.
That's the
yeah.
border river. So you got all the way up there.
And
Now,
the 10th Corps went up to the right side, and
Mm-hmm.
the I Corps and the 9th Corps went up to the left side,
Mm-hmm.
and in the middle.
Right.
And we were to make contact with the 10th Corps. We established lines at the river,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, the next morning, we woke up with Chinese among us.
Right. They were waiting for you.
They were waiting.
Okay. Now, what happened to you at that point?
Well, we made a hasteful retreat
Mm-hmm.
or withdrawal. We don't call it retreating.
Right.
We withdraw.
Right.
We withdrew back towards Seoul again.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing is that I came down with stomach ulcers,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was evacuated to Japan on a C-46 or C-47.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which one it was. And that ended my career in Korea, or at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I did go back to Korea a couple more times, but
But after the war was over, or
no,
Okay.
during the war.
all right. Well, now, how long were you laid up with the ulcers?
just that one day.
Okay.
And they hit us that night or the next morning.
So you just were not with the unit when the unit got attacked, and then you didn't get back to them?
Nope.
Okay. So where did you go next then?
Well, we passed up where I got shot and was back into the on July the 14th.
Okay. Yeah. Let's go back there.
Uh,
Is that July? That's back at Tucson.
we were attacking this hill, and there was a self-propelled artillery piece in what you call a half tank.
Yeah. It was a M7 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and as we advanced up this hill, he opened fire on us, and I laid down behind a grave, and there was a tree behind me. And he hit this tree, and the shrapnel loaded me down.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the morning, and I laid there all morning because every time one of them would move, he'd open up with a machine gun off of that self-propel.
Yep.
And when it got dark, I crawled out, and I was the first casualty to go through the 7th Division aid station.
Mm-hmm.
And as we were lying there on stretchers, we had no hospitals at that time, and it was just a tent. And
Right.
they had stretchers lined up in it, and you were in those, and a guy come through and said, the Koreans are coming over that hill behind us, and if you want to, you can get up and, if you're able, and rejoin your unit. And I decided that my wounds wasn't that bad, and I got up and went back to my unit. And I'd been gone from them 3 days, I guess it was.
Mm-hmm. And were you able to find them again?
Oh, yes. There wasn't many of us over there, you know, at this time. It was only the 24th Division.
Right.
The 7th was coming in, the 1st Cab was coming in. We were getting people right and left. We even had a RCT come in from Okinawa, 5th RCT.
Mm-hmm.
They were assigned to the 24th Division. Now, where was we?
Well, you'd gotten the main part of the story. We'd gotten up. You'd been to the Yalu. You were retreating back, and then you were evacuated out.
Yes.
Because you had the ulcers and so forth.
And I went to Kobe, Japan, the hospital there,
Mm-hmm.
and they got me well enough, and I was released and assigned to the unit that I was supposed to went to in June.
Was that the 229th Ordnance Company?
229th Ordnance Company.
All right. Now,
It was a base depot.
okay. So what did you actually have to do there? What were your duties?
Well, I was the chief clerk of the depot,
Mm-hmm.
and this depot controlled all the ammunition dumps in Japan, which I think there were 7 of them at the time. And after being there, my family came over. Or was that later? I'm getting hazy now.
Mm-hmm.
My memory is getting bad.
Okay. Well, when did you get married?
Oh, I got married in 1957
Okay. So,
on one of my assignments back to the state.
all right. So whatever family would have come over would not have been them then.
No, not at that time. Not then. No.
Okay.
I was trying to think. Because I joined the 1st Cab, who then went back to Korea.
Mm-hmm.
We just rode ships up to the Incheon before the, my goodness. I missed a whole phase in there because when I was evacuated to Kobe,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I joined the first Cav.
Okay.
And they had, I don't know, I'm confused.
Okay. Well, part of the first cavalry was involved in the advance north up into Korea that you were part of. And,
Yeah.
some of them got cut up in the first Chinese counterattack before you even got to the Yalu.
Yeah.
So they were up there for a while, but they may have been taken out of the line at some point later on. So they're around someplace.
I'd have to check my data that I have on my story that I'm leaving for my children.
Mm-hmm.
Because I made a trip back to Korea with the first Cav on ships that was being decoyed so that MacArthur could land at Incheon.
Mm-hmm.
All we did was go over the side of the ship and load the LSTs and circle around, come on the other side and come back up. Did that all day. But I can't remember what dates that was.
Well, that would have been at some point just coming into Incheon as reinforcements at that point.
Well, this was after I was evacuated, I
Right.
know that.
Right.
Had to be.
Because the Chinese got as far as Seoul when they went south, and they got stopped between Seoul and Incheon.
They actually went past Seoul.
Yeah, they got past Seoul, but not too far before they got pushed back in the other direction
Oh, yeah.
again. But then we continued to use Incheon. We took Seoul back, and we used Incheon, continued to use that as a base. So a lot of things landed there at different times. But the main landing, the original landing at Incheon took place while you were down at Busan. Because the 10th Corps
Yeah,
right in there
yeah,
and you were still
yeah.
in the south, yeah.
So this was another, I don't know why.
Yeah. But Incheon, the port was weird enough and the tides were so strong that they often would use the landing ships or things like that to land rather than just, going up to a dock someplace. So if you went in at Incheon, that would be how you did it.
We didn't go in. We never landed.
Okay, you just drove around?
We got back on the ships and went back to Japan,
Okay.
to Hokkaido.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was before I joined the... Oh, man. I'm strictly confused.
All right. Well,
Been so many places.
yeah. Okay. So basically, during the period of the Korean War, you move around between several different units. You're in Japan some of the time. Did you actually land someplace in Korea again while the fighting was still on, or did you just go back after?
No, I went back over there. I was with the 9th Corps.
Mm-hmm.
Because I got the Bronze Star from the 9th Corps. I was the chief clerk of ammunition
All right. I want to
branch.
Okay, I want to pause the interview here. All right, we were trying to sort out a little bit in what order you were doing things over in Korea. So did you kind of look that up and figure that part out?
Yeah, because in 1952, I came home in 52, and I was assigned to this National Guard unit at Fort Bliss, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
which didn't agree with me, so I volunteered to go back to overseas. And that's when I was joined the first Cav in 1952.
All right. So if we go back, so at the end of 1950, you were with the 24th Division. You'd gone up to the alley. You were coming back. You got pulled out.
That's in September.
Yeah. And so then you went back to Japan from there.
Right.
And then from there, so did you stay with the Ordnance Company for a while?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you were doing that in Japan. Now, what impression did you have of Japan, by the way, while you were there? What did you think of the place?
Well, I don't think that the people liked us too well, but a beautiful country.
Mm-hmm.
Smelly, but beautiful. It's not like it is today.
Mm-hmm.
There was still quite a bit of war damage. So I left the 229 base depot and went to Curry
Mm-hmm.
at one of the sub-depots that we controlled. I had a choice of which depot I wanted to go to, so I went to Curry at an island in Edajima, which was an old naval, Naval Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there, I guess, till 53 years. And I came back to the States again.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed like I would always just have 2 and 3 years overseas and 1 year in the States.
Right. Okay. So you're going back and forth, and you're serving with sort of several different units. Now, you mentioned at a certain point you're with the 1st Cavalry Division.
Yes.
All right. And back in Korea with the 1st Cav?
They were in Hokkaido,
Mm-hmm.
and they got orders to go back to Korea. This was in '52.
Right.
They had been evacuated from there to regroup.
Right.
I don't know why we rode those ships up there and did that amphibious, supposed to be landing, and
Mm-hmm.
because we sailed back and got off at Busan.
Mm-hmm.
Lord, I've been around so much, I can't remember the exact dates. And
Well, you did mention you got a Bronze Star at some point.
that was with the 9th Corps, but that was in, I think that was '54.
Okay. But that 54 would be after the war itself was over.
No,
Because the war,
the war was still going on.
the armistice is 53. So that's...
Okay,
So you're still manning, we're still manning front lines along the DMZ at that point.
Yes.
But the war, officially anyway, was over.
Yeah. Well, no, they were still fighting because I know I used to get the expenditure reports from all the artillery,
Mm-hmm.
small arms that was fired. They reported to the 9th Corps headquarters, and I was with the ordnance section of it. So I had finally got back into the ordnance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm totally confused. I made so many trips to Japan and Korea. So let's advance a little further.
Okay.
When I left Japan from the from Curry,
Mm-hmm.
I went back to the States and joined First Sergeant of the 906th Ammo Company, which was stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And my family joined me there. And surprise, surprise, I got orders from Washington to go to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I landed in Vietnam in '58
Mm-hmm.
because in '59 I served my tour. It was only a year tour at that time. It was a State Department mission to recover the equipment that we had left, given the French.
Right.
And it was a nice assignment. We were stationed in Saigon, and one of the hotels there had all the convenience of home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was wonderful duty until 3 days before my time to come home, and then they bombed my hotel.
Mm-hmm.
They threw a bomb inside it,
Right.
a cycle charge. And I saw it immediately and hollered, "Grenade!" And it wasn't a grenade, but that's all I could think of, and dove over behind the desk. And the other guy just stood there, one of my friends. It was him and I were processing to go home, back to the States, and he got ripped apart.
Yeah.
But up until that time, the Americans had the free run of the country.
So otherwise, you weren't really considering yourself to be in a war zone or anything like that?
No, well, I was in a war zone, but it was strictly between South Korea and North Korea,
Or South Vietnam and North Vietnam?
or North Vietnam.
Yeah. And in the late 1950s, there is a conflict going on, but there's not as large a scale of war as you got later. So,
No,
so you
it was
could be in
stalemate.
Saigon and you could almost feel like a tourist, maybe. I don't know. Were there a lot of American weapons and things that you had to go locate
No,
or
we only had
process?
500 people in this. The outfit I joined was TERM, Temporary Equipment Removal, and we just took the supplies that the weapons and ammunition that was left over. By then was obsolete from Army standards at that time,
Right.
and we just dumped it in the ocean off of LSTs. It wasn't worth recovering.
Right. Because it was World War II vintage stuff, mostly.
Beg your pardon?
It was mostly World War II type equipment. So I think
It was.
that's what
It
we were giving
was
the French.
155 gun, which is was obsolete. Pack artillery, 76s, 75. I don't know what it was. But anyway, that ended that tour there.
Right.
And I came back to the States again. That was in 1960. Trying to figure out where I was at in 1960. I left out a whole episode in there because I remember now that while I was, when I came back, I joined 820th, which was at Fort Carson, and after a year there, I went to Chicago, 5th Army headquarters. And from there, I went up to Camp McCoy, just temporary duty to train National Guards and Reserves at Camp McCoy, Wisconsin.
Right.
The largest camp in the United States. Can handle 7 divisions. And there by then I had been married. When I was in Chicago, at 5th Army headquarters, I met my wife. I met her at Camp McCoy during another summer. I went to McCoy twice. Once with the 820th, and again with the 5th Army headquarters.
Right.
Well, I had so many darn units, I get them all mixed up. But anyway, while I was there at Camp McCoy training, we were closing out the camp after the last troops had left, and I got orders to go to Korea. And as I get to Seattle, they said, well, you just came back from there, so we don't have to send you again. Where do you want to go? And I said, back to where I come from. And they said, no, you got to go someplace. So I went to Japan. And while I was in Japan, I brought my family over. That was in 56. No, yeah, 56. No, 57.
57. Yeah, that's when you got married. Yeah.
Yeah, 57. And my family came over or my wife came over with my son. I only had one son at the time. And then while we were there, my wife had the second son made in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the announcement we used on a fan that opened up from Iwo Kiwani, Japan, come this little Japanese. He was a dual citizen for 11 years. He had to live 11 years consecutive in the United States to become a naturalized citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Although he had dual citizenship,
Right.
being born Americans.
Now, how long did you actually stay in Japan that time?
We stayed, I was there 3 years, but my family got there and it was only there 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And from there we went back to Curry, where I had been back in 1951
Mm-hmm.
at this Aikigo ammunition depot.
Now, were things much different in Japan the second time than they were from the first, or was it still?
Yeah, it had improved considerably. I even took, my wife brought a car over with her,
Mm-hmm.
and we traveled from Tokyo to Curry
Mm-hmm.
on Japanese roads, what they call roads.
Yep.
That car really took a beating going down there. That was a funny incident too. On the way down there, we stopped overnight at Kobe, and my wife had to go to the restroom, and I was at the hotel was next door to the station, railroad station. So my wife was going to go into the restroom at the railroad station, and she walked in, and all of a sudden here she come right back out, and I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "There's men and women in there."
Mm-hmm.
They used the same restroom. Oh, then we went on down to Curry. Sometimes we couldn't get through the towns. We had to go around countryside to get over.
Because they didn't have any kind of regular highway system at that point, or even very wide streets in the towns.
No, it was nothing practically. In fact, if I'd knew what the conditions was, I'd have had it shipped down.
Mm-hmm.
But it was enjoyable there with my wife. There we lived on Curry, and commuted daily to the Aikigo. To Iwo Jima.
Oh.
Yeah, it was Iwo Jima.
Well, no, Iwo Jima is way off in the Bonin Islands, but they.
Well, what was the island there where the Naval Academy was?
You mentioned it earlier. It's probably in the written record.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the island, the naval base at Curry.
Oh, yeah. And we had this ammunition base there, because we used to go into where the first atomic bomb was dropped
Okay, so Hiroshima?
at Hiroshima.
Yeah.
But I brought back pictures of the very center where they had a dome in there. And in the background you have this church, the only surviving building.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nice tour. That was one of my enjoyable tours with my family. And by then Japan had partially recovered.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 57, 58.
Now, while you were based in Japan, did you have much contact with the Japanese military at all? I mean, if you were at Curry, it would have been a naval base. Okay.
None whatsoever. We just, my job was strictly with the ordnance, and
Mm-hmm.
that was our contact.
Right.
Peace and quiet.
Right. Okay. Now, once you finished the tour in Japan, then did you ship back to the States for good at that point, or?
Yes, we came back, and I'm trying to think there, because I had been to, because I was at Fort Knox and, Fort Knox. And I was at Fort Benning once there too.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I went over to Vietnam the first time, was from Fort Knox,
Okay.
because I had to go to Nashville to get my civilian clothes. We incidentally were in civilian clothes because we weren't supposed to be military.
All right.
Now, I can't recall all the assignments I had up to them because I was with the 906. No, 906 was at Carson. The 820th was at Fort Carson. Anyway, I took an ammo company over to Vietnam before the war broke out, or before the troop buildup.
Right.
Because we went into Quy Nhon.
Mm-hmm.
My company landed at Quy Nhon, and we were there, and 2 weeks later the first Cav made an assault landing on Quy Nhon, and they run us off of the beach so that they could make their landing. Oh, that was
So
funny.
they invaded where you already were.
Yeah. But from there, that was in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
July of 1966, I went to the hospital. My stomach started bothering me again. And I decided that I had 23 years and I just call it quits.
Right.
So I put in for my retirement and reported to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I started my Army career, for discharge.
Right. Now, once you got out, okay, where did you go then from there?
I come to Spring Lake.
Okay. And so what brought you to Spring Lake, Michigan?
My wife was from Michigan. She was born in Ludington, and her family lived here in Spring Lake. So her mother was getting a little old and didn't have much longer to go, so we came here with the understanding that eventually was going back to Oklahoma, where I come from.
Right.
But the children enjoyed it so much here, and they had been traveling all over, so we decided to settle down.
Right. Now, did you take
Not
a job?
my choice, but
Right.
the family's choice. So
Right.
I concurred. I'm handpicked.
Okay. Now, did you take a job here then, or?
No, I thought I'd live off my retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And we were here about 5 months, and I had sent a resume to the munitions command, and they immediately hired me, and I didn't know it at the time, and until I got a telephone call one time, said, "When are you reporting for duty in civil service?"
Right.
And I said, "Well, did I have a job?" "Oh, well, you've been on the payroll for 2 weeks." So I immediately went down there and stayed till I could find a home that I could buy or rent and my family joined me.
Mm-hmm. Now, where was that?
This was in Joliet, Illinois.
Okay.
But we lived in the suburbs, a little small town, farm town called Manuka.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there 7 years, the longest I've ever in one spot since I left home.
Mm-hmm. And then why did you leave that then?
Well, at that time they were having those riots and things, and they decided to consolidate the munitions command, all the sub units, like I was with the Ammunition Supply and Procurement Agency.
Mm-hmm.
We furnished or operated all the arsenals in the United States. And when they combined them, they decided to open their headquarters at Moline. I can't even think, it's Quad Cities.
Yeah. Yeah, so northwestern Illinois rather than
Yeah.
northeastern Illinois.
But rather than go there,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to turn in my hat. So
Right.
with the 7 years that I had with civil service, I combined with my military service, give me over 30 years, and I did retire.
Right.
And we came back to here.
You come back
Every
to
time I went overseas, my wife would come back to here.
Mm-hmm.
And this was continuously throughout the whole time until we moved here, and then finally. Well, when I retired, I came here and bought this place, and my goodness, it's over 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Lived here. I'm a native Michigander now,
Right.
except that they don't recognize it.
Mm-hmm. All right. One of the questions that I normally ask people sort of toward the end of an interview is, well, how do they think their time in the service affected them? But then I'm usually talking to guys who were in for 2 or 3 years. You really had a whole career there, pretty much. And it might be hard for you even to think about what you would have done or what life would have been like if you hadn't gone in the Army in the first place.
I don't know. I would want to be a farmer. I mean, I had no experience at it, but I love to grow things. I love to see things grow. And I don't have the least idea what it was that I would have wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
But as I think back, I know I would like to have been a farmer because I love to see things grow.
But would you rather be a farmer in Michigan or down in Oklahoma?
I would have rather been in Oklahoma. My heart is in Oklahoma. All my relatives are there too. What's left of them. And I'm getting as old as the hills, old as dirt, they say. Too set in my ways now to move.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, I have a son here, and I got one in Texas, and I go back and forth to visit. That's an interesting question, though. What would I have wanted to be? I always wanted to be a cowboy when I was growing up.
All right. Now, you had a very long career in the military and so forth, and a lot of different things and places. Are there particular events or things that memories that come back to you a lot that you sort of haven't mentioned here yet?
It came back, the biggest thing I can think of is that when I was in Italy in 46 through 49, the Army had changed. It was no longer the type of Army that I had joined. It was more, you had to ask somebody to do something rather than order them to do something. And you spent most of your time writing letters to congressmen that the mothers, concerned mothers, her son was out taking a hike and he wasn't supposed to be doing that. He was hollered at and he can't do that. And then at that time too, you spent a lot of your time answering these different stores wanted money from the troops because they were credit cards and what have you. The Army really changed overnight from wartime to peacetime.
Now, did the kind of people who went into the Army change too?
I really know that anybody that goes into the service but become a man, from a boy to a man. If he don't, then he won't stay in there. And the Army being a volunteer Army today, I think it's a mistake because we really need more troops right now. These poor boys going over now and 3 and 4 times on tours of duty, I can understand their stress. And there's no reason in the world why we shouldn't have it, but that's the first thing they do when there's no war is start calling out the troops.
Sure.
And it's a mistake. And it comes back to bite you every time. That's what happened in World War II. That's what happened in Korea.
Yeah, well, that unit that you were fighting with in Korea, they had to cobble it together from whatever personnel they had available in Japan. Yeah, and they'll do that. Well, part of the reason why we do this project to begin with is to let a lot of people know sort of what the military experience was like and what the life is like for soldiers, whether it was World War II or when we talk to people back from Iraq and Afghanistan too, because these days, unless you're from a military family, often you really don't have much of an idea of what that's like at all. I mean, there hasn't been a draft in the better part of 40 years, and for most of the American population, all of that stuff is foreign territory.
Well, we're a close-knitted family, the military is. Like right now, I'm the commander of the VFW at Grand Haven. And it's a place where we can sit and talk, and we know what we're talking about. We understand each other. It's hard to talk about a war with somebody who hasn't experienced it, and we really don't enjoy it. I go to these different schools and interview, and the first thing they want to know is, how many people did you kill? Or, did you get shot? And so I always open my classes or whatever we're there for, by telling them that we don't talk personal things, and if you want to know about military life and military soldiers, we'll talk about that. But as far as fighting a war, we're not going to talk about. And it's surprising how after maybe your second year there, we do go back. I take troops up with me, veterans up with me. Veterans are for veterans. And that's why we have these organizations like the VFW, the American Legion, AMVETS, is that we can get together and talk. Most people are under the assumption that we just go there and sit in the bar, but that's not true. My VFW, we support the community. We provide scholarships to veterans' children. It's really veterans working for veterans. We donate money to the calling cards. We donate money to these various organizations here that provide transportation to medical facilities for veterans. We visit the veterans in nursing homes, and hospitals. We help anyone that's in dire need of money or something. It's veterans helping veterans, and through these organizations we get together.
And
there is no hardship between any organization that I've ever belonged to. I belong to the American Legion, VFW, and being a member of them, we get along good. There's no hard feelings about anything. But the VFW always feels that they're unique because the stipulations for joining the VFW, you had to be in a combat zone.
Right.
Whereas with the American Legion, I'm not knocking the American Legion, but the American Legion will accept any veteran. So we do feel a little elite, but we're getting far and in between because the joining today is of these fresh troops out of Iraq, Southern Desert Storm, are not joining.
Right.
I think I've only got 6 Iraqi veterans and 1 Desert Storm and a couple of Cold Wars.
Now, do you get Vietnam veterans?
We got Vietnam veterans. I have 113 World War II veterans. You wouldn't think there's that many in this little area, but
I've met an awful lot, so not too surprising.
and then we have, I think it's 89 Korean vets, and I think 69 Vietnam vets. So we're made up of all the groups, and each one has their own story. I don't regret my military career. I enjoyed all of it except the shooting part. And if I ever had it to do again, I sure wouldn't be in the infantry.
Right.
I've had my share of infantry. But that's the guy that does it all. He's the first one that's going to meet the enemy.
Yeah. So those foot soldiers and the line companies who take the losses, that still happens now.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the record here before we close out the interview?
No, I just hope that somebody can get a benefit out of this. I really don't enjoy being interviewed, but I think that the word should get out.
Well, we very much appreciate you willing to talk to me. So thank you for doing that today.